It was a Tuesday morning, January 1989. A delivery truck approached the Vortex property and dropped off a box addressed to Rose Roud. Inside was a crystal ball and a hastily written note. It read, "Be back soon. The great ignoring nears its end." The note smelled of tacky booze and casino carpet.
My Rose, I'm a producer now. Be back soon. A big producer now, you see. But the show is coming to an end. It got canceled. The show is coming to an end. They found the boy she said was dead. They found the boy she said was dead. He was alive. She had told the parents to stop looking for him. They found the boy she said was dead. Alive! Oh my God! In a ditch. Alive without a hitch. Oops! She had assured the parents that he was dead. But he was alive! Oops! Assured them he was definitely dead. She told those parents to go ahead and stop looking for his son. My Rose, be back soon, my Rose. Be back soon, my Rose. Be back soon, my Rose.
No one, not only. Please welcome the little girl who can talk to the dead. Year of Peoples.
But the show is coming to an end. It got canceled. The show is coming to an end. They found the boy she said was dead. They found the boy she said was dead. Was alive. She had told the parents to stop looking for him. Found the boy she said was dead. Alive. Oh my God. In a ditch. Alive without a hitch. Oops. She had assured the parents that he was dead, but he was alive. Oops. Assured them he was definitely dead. She told those parents to go ahead and stop looking for their son. Be back soon, my Rose. Be back soon, my Rose. Be back soon, my Rose.
The sky noise started on a brisk March morning. Tergo Taffet's journal described it as a filthy screech. Harriet Johanna said it sounded like a gurgling echo. It came from the sky, above the vortex core. Unusual smells, visuals, and sounds are not unheard of in the proximity of a spiritual vortex. But the suddenness of the sky noise panicked all the spiritualists. If they were truly in the ascended era, why would the sky be making such odd noises? Was the Feshp correct? Was the vortex beginning to swirl again? Rose Roud stayed in her meditation chamber that whole day. When she came down for supper, the spiritualists asked her to please cease the great ignoring and tell them what the sky noise was. Rose Roud ignored them. In truth, she herself was the most upset by the sky noise, because she knew exactly what this particular sky noise was. This was a summoning. As the vortex did to her years ago, the vortex was singing out. Throughout the realms, the vortex was calling upon an ascender. Spruggets are root-like structures below ground of an active spiritual vortex. They can be broken and peeled to squeeze sprugget juice from, or ground for sprugget powder. Spruggets must be contained. If spruggets are not contained, they become gnomes. Hefferton had dumped the original gnome in the lake, and the vortex had, of course, been defeated by the Ascended Roseroud in the Second War. But one day in the summer of 1989, the Hungarian prince and Bishop Garrison were out frolicking in the fields when they both tripped over a large sprugget. Bishop Garrison knew this confirmed the vortex was swirling again. He knew this likely meant there was a gnome residing on the property. But Bishop Garrison was having fun in the Ascended Era. He did not want the Ascended Era to end, so he buried the sprugget. He found more spruggets in the following days and weeks, and he buried each one of them as the sky noise continued to bellow from above. It wouldn't be until August that Tergo Tapid caught Bishop Garrison burying a sprugget in the dead of night. She approached him, interrogated him, and made him confess. She then blackmailed him with the information. Bishop Garrison became the spiritual and sexual servant to Tergo Tapid. He spent all of his time serving her. Tergo Tapid, meanwhile, also kept the spruggets a secret and began burying them herself in the same hole. Because if the Ascended Roseroud found out about the spruggets, then she would make them all search the property and find the gnome. This was not a task anyone felt like doing, because everyone was busy having so much goddamn fun in the Ascended Era. The helicopter flew over the lake, and it made Hefferton sick. They were getting close. It had been 2 years since Hefferton was on the Vortex property. He sat across from Yura Peoples, now 17 years old, and her mother. In the 2 years, Hefferton had become a producer of Yura's successful television program. She had been the little girl who could talk to the dead until a recent controversy resulted in her show's cancellation and an immediate need for funds. Hefferton had made multiple sexual advances toward the mother until she relented. They were now a disgusting husband and wife. He, Hefferton, now somehow the surrogate father to this infamous child. He looked at his family sitting across from him in the helicopter, both mother and daughter pouting grumpily. In that moment, he had a fantasy, a striking vision. He opened the helicopter window, stuck his head out, and put it into the spinning blades. He felt the rotors clog on his neck fat for a split second as he decapitated himself in front of his fake family and plopped into the lake. From there, he watched the helicopter spin out of control and crash directly into the Ascended Roseroud, blowing her into 1,000,000 pieces. But alas, he remained in the helicopter. He looked out and saw the Vortex property come into view. Hefferton had returned. And just as he had planned, within an hour, the great ignoring would end, and a new spiritualist would be declared wondrous. Much to his surprise, however, it would not be him. A helicopter landed on the Vortex property. Hefferton got off first. He had gained weight. He approached Tergo Tapid, who spit on his crotch in disgust. He moved on to a chained-up Bishop Garrison, who solemnly nodded at him. Then he approached her. The Ascended Roseroud had not seen Hefferton since the slapping occurred years prior. Roseroud ignored Hefferton as he approached and whispered something gently in her ear. After he whispered this, Roseroud turned to Hefferton. She embraced him and gave him a kiss on the forehead. She walked to the helicopter, knelt to her knees, and stretched out her arms. Yura Peoples had arrived, and out she stepped off the helicopter, as striking and magical as Roseroud had imagined her. Roseroud stepped forward, tears of happiness gleaming in her eyes. And then, an older woman, the mother of Yura Peoples and bride of Hefferton, stepped off the helicopter. Roseroud's face dropped. She turned to Hefferton. "Who the fuck is that?" Bishop Garrison walked with a spring in his step. He was delighted. He was on his way to the first party thrown by Rose Roud since the end of the Great Ignoring. Bishop Garrison was eager to talk to Rose Roud once more, to look in her eyeballs, to eat her delicious cake. He hoped the Hungarian prince would be there. He hoped Turgot Tapid would be nice to him tonight. As he approached, he saw Pammy Peoples, the mother of Yera Peoples and bride of Hefferton, dancing by the lake. She waved to him. He waved back. "Are you going to the party, Pammy?" Bishop giggled gleefully. He then watched as she repeatedly slammed her own head against a rock until she lay motionless, covered in blood, making a disgusting gurgling noise. Bishop Garrison stood frozen in shock, watching the gurgling woman for a full 10 minutes before he sprinted to inform the others of what he saw. He entered the party and screamed, "The child's mother is dead! She bashed her head into a rock by the lake." "My mother is dead!" shouted Yera Peoples, horrified. Yes, she is gurgling blood by the lake. It's awful!" As everyone panicked, Bishop Garrison walked up to Hefferton. "I'm sorry for your loss." "What loss?" "Didn't you hear?" said Bishop Garrison. "Your wife is dead. She broke her head by the lake." Hefferton stared off. "Shame. She would have loved this cake." After Patty Peoples died, a mood of suspicion and morbidity entrenched the property. Yera Peoples was given a potion to offset her violent state of grief. She stayed under the watch of Turgot Tapid, who comforted her and provided her warmth. Hefferton, meanwhile, was nowhere to be seen. After 5 days, Bishop Garrison led a solo search party to find him. Bishop Garrison came upon a hump in the grass. Inside the hump, he heard the voice of Hefferton. He took out a knife and stabbed the hump. Juices poured out of it. The hump began to subside. He heard the sound of Hefferton screaming in agony. Bishop Garrison, yet again, sprinted back to the residence in a panic. He banged on the door of Rose Roud. She answered her door and saw Bishop crying. She smacked him. "Why do you always run through doors with your tears like some sort of little fairy boy? What sort of soldier are you?" Rose Roud asked. Bishop Garrison composed himself and whimpered, "Ascended Rose, I have awful news. There are gnomes on the property. I found Hefferton inside of one." It is said that at this moment, the rage of Rose Roud was so potent that Bishop Garrison urinated himself in front of her. When he did this, Rose Roud became even angrier and brutally beat him. She spent the next hour beating up Bishop Garrison for delivering such awful news to her. They would soon discover there was not one gnome, not 2 gnomes, not 3 nor 4. No, there were 5 gnomes residing on the Vortex property. 5 gnomes. The reckoning of the 5 gnomes had begun. The spiritualists sat one evening, eating a delicious spaghetti meatball dinner. Hefferton entered the dining room. He was covered in a thick, gooey substance. They hadn't seen him in months. Hefferton smiled bashfully. "May I please have some spaghetti meatball?" he asked. In the months of Hefferton's absence, much had changed. Yera Peoples had taken over as second in command to the ascended Rose Roud. She spent all of her time under the tutelage of her new commander. She was rarely allowed out onto the Vortex property, as Turgot Tapid led the dangerous gnome mapping project. Harriet Johanna, Bishop Garrison, and the Hungarian prince searched the property for hours each day, attempting to locate Hefferton and the 5 gnomes. Every day, Turgot Tapid returned to have supper and be berated by Rose Roud for not finding a single gnome or Hefferton. It was a time of tension. It was a time of jealous simmering. So there Hefferton stood, covered in goo, drunk, on a balmy pink evening, August 10th, 1990. Rose Roud slurped her spaghetti meatball. She stood up and said, "Dear Hefferton, welcome back. We missed you, but your time is now concluded." Hefferton sprinted out the door. Yira Peoples sent spiritual energies toward Hefferton as he ran away. He fell flat on his face. This is how Hefferton broke his face. Rose Roud looked at her pupil and smiled. "The acquired child, you are my favorite person to ever live," Rose Roud cooed.